Hi, my name is Janna Ireland, and I'm an artist living in Los Angeles, California. I'd like to tell you about one of my long-term projects, how it was made, what the work means to me, and the ways in which doing the project pushed me outside of my comfort zone. I've been taking pictures for a very long time, most of my life in fact, but there's still so much more that I can learn about photography. Each project teaches me new things. The project I'm going to show you in this video is called There Is Only One Paul R. Williams. The focus is on architecture, but the pictures aren't just about buildings. They're about light and shadow. They're about taking familiar things out of context and making them abstract. To do this work, I had to learn how to look at everyday spaces in a new way. I hope you enjoy the work. After I show you the project, I'll talk a little bit about photography and how you might be able to apply some of what I've learned doing my work to making your own photographs. For the past several years, I've been photographing buildings designed by Paul Revere Williams, a legendary Los Angeles architect who practiced for 50 years and planned nearly 3,000 buildings. He was the first Black certified architect west of the Mississippi and the first Black member of the American Institute of Architects. In 2017, 37 years after his death, 44 years after his retirement, and 95 years after his induction to the American Institute of Architects, Williams became the first Black architect to win the AIA Gold Medal. My study of Paul R. Williams began in the summer of 2016 when Barbara Bester, a renowned architect in her own right, asked if I would be interested in photographing some of his buildings. She had gotten my name from my former professor, the exceptional photographer James Welling. I said yes right away, even though Barbara was a stranger, Williams's name was only vaguely familiar, and my knowledge of architecture was limited to a brief elective unit on Greek columns in the 6th grade. At its core, my work is about the expression of Black identity in American culture, and I felt an immediate connection to Williams's story. I am not an architectural photographer, or even a documentary photographer. Most of my photographs are fictional scenes that relate to my own experiences. When I said yes to Barbara that summer, I had no idea how to go about photographing a building, let alone dozens of them. What I did have was a 1-year-old son and a brand new full-time administrative job at USC. I was struggling to figure out how I was going to continue to fit art into my life. As busy as I already was, I was happy to have a new assignment. That initial email from Barbara came at exactly the right time. A few months later, pregnant with my second son, I began my Paul Williams work. The decision to photograph in black and white was intuitive, almost automatic, and not tied to any sense of nostalgia for bygone eras. I simply wanted to mute distractions like the color of a wall or carpet, and draw attention instead to Williams's voluptuous curves and tidy lines. Most architectural photography is designed to sell a space. It asks, what purpose does a building or room serve? What does it look like as a whole? My goal was to create an experience of Williams's work that was about the feeling of living in his spaces and loving them. Williams thought about every little detail, and I felt that seeking out those details would be a fitting way to honor him. I searched for clues about Paul Williams and his buildings. Paul Revere Williams was born in 1894 to parents who moved from Memphis to Los Angeles for the promised curative properties of the climate. Both had tuberculosis, and both were dead before Williams's 5th birthday. Williams and his older brother ended up in separate foster homes. The woman who raised Paul Williams recognized his potential and nurtured his skills. His artistic talents distinguished him from his peers throughout his childhood, and he began his study of architecture as a teenager. When Williams was in high school, a teacher advised him that he'd never succeed as an architect. Black people wouldn't be able to afford to hire him, and white people wouldn't deign to. This conversation was a major event in Williams's young life. By his own account, it had never occurred to him that race would complicate his professional choices. At this moment, many young people would have abandoned their dream, as I very nearly did in a similar moment during my own high school career, 90 years later at the Philadelphia High School for Creative and Performing Arts. In my senior year, a teacher told me that I shouldn't apply to New York University, the school I'd fallen in love with,
because it wasn't a place for people from humble beginnings. For a while, I believed him. The weight of a few words from an adult could be unbearable for a child. As Williams told it, his teacher seemed to think he was doing an unduly ambitious kid a favor by bringing him down to earth. I believe my own teacher thought he was doing the same. In both cases, the discouragement ultimately acted as a catalyst, not a deterrent. When I stopped being heartbroken, I was livid. I was 17 years old and at the top of my class. Who was this man to tell me I was overreaching? I sent in my application at the last minute, and I went to NYU. Williams emerged from his own crisis with his commitment to architecture redoubled, his childish ambition transformed into an adult's iron will to succeed. In I Am a Negro, his 1937 essay for American Magazine, Williams wrote of the drive that propelled him through the early years of his career. I wanted to vindicate every ability I had. I wanted to acquire new abilities. I wanted to prove that I, as an individual, deserved a place in the world. Williams went on to design municipal buildings, banks, churches, hospitals, motels, university halls, secondary schools, funeral homes, public housing projects, celebrity estates, and thousands of family homes. If you have ever spent an afternoon driving around Los Angeles, you've seen a Paul Williams building or two. Williams' story is one I believe only could have taken place here in Los Angeles. When he began his work as an architect in the 1910s, much of the Los Angeles we know today was a collection of dirt roads, farms, and oil fields. He officially opened his own practice in 1923, right as the population of Los Angeles County reached 1 million. The booming city had 3 factors that allowed him to flourish: lots of money, lots of land, and a handful of wealthy white people liberal or desperate enough to commission a young black architect. Subtract any one of those factors, and his big story would shrink until it disappeared. Word spread about Williams' impeccable work. In Hancock Park and Flint Ridge and Pasadena and Beverly Hills, one Williams home, and it was important to him that they be thought of as homes, not houses, became 2, which became a dozen. By the time he retired in 1973, there were more than 2,000 Paul R. Williams homes in Southern California. Sometimes people who had seen his work and heard his name would come into his office, only to be shocked to find that he was black. Some turned and left, but others stayed out of politeness. For these people, Williams taught himself a brilliant trick. He learned how to draw upside down as well as he could right side up. A skittish prospective client could be drawn in by the magic of watching the home of their dreams appear on the table in front of them, without the impropriety of sitting next to the black architect. When I began my project about Paul Williams, this and other stories about his knack for turning indignities into triumphs intrigued me. How did it feel to design homes in neighborhoods that he wouldn't have been allowed to live in? How did he unwind from the incredible stress of having to defer to people who would enjoy the benefits of his brilliance and labor without fully respecting him as a human being? When designing an intimate space for a client too prejudiced to shake his hand, did he view his work as a subversive act, or something he had to do to survive? Williams' white contemporaries could find work via signature style and the cult of personality. Williams had to work without ego, shifting to meet his clients' demands. The result is a body of work that demonstrates incredible dexterity. Williams designed Monterey colonials and Tudor revivals and modernist bungalows. He could move deftly between historicist and contemporary styles, and often found clever ways to blend the new and the old. He believed in designing to precisely suit the needs of each client, and built his reputation by giving even the smallest commissions his full attention. I spent 2.5 years patiently waiting to be granted access to the home Williams designed for himself and his wife, a sleek, white, international-style house that resembles a futuristic riverboat run aground in the middle of Los Angeles. I gained entry to a house once owned by William Holden, later by Denzel Washington, when the current homeowner spied me through a window as I tried to take a clandestine picture from across the street. As soon as I said Paul Williams, his look of suspicion turned to one of warmth and understanding. I have scoured Zillow listings for Paul Williams houses and cold-called real estate agents. I have been introduced to property owners via friends of friends of friends. On several occasions, Williams homeowners read about my work somewhere, sought out my contact information, and invited me over. There are sites that turned out to be great disappointments, and others that exceeded all expectations. There are also my white whale houses, beauties whose owners I unsuccessfully courted for months. I still hope to get to those someday. It is not the beauty of Williams's work that inspires me, though it does bring me a lot of pleasure. It is the thought of him grinding day after day in this city, patiently building his practice and proving his detractors wrong, that makes me return to his work. My photographs of Williams's buildings are as much a tribute to his labor and persistence as they are a tribute to his talent. I am proud to live and work in Paul Williams's city. If Williams could become one of the most notable architects of the 20th century here, what can my children become in the 21st? This is a fascinating time to live in Los Angeles, though I suppose that can be said of any moment in the city's history. A city can change so fast. Tracking Williams's work is my way of making sense of this enormous city that is really 88 smaller cities. Paul Williams was a faithful citizen of Los Angeles who used his abundant gifts to change the face of the city. Los Angeles has changed without him and will continue to change in unknown ways, but his mark is indelible. Los Angeles is known as a city that likes to forget its history, but I think it will always remember Paul Revere Williams.
There's an assignment that I give to my college students that I think could help you learn to reimagine familiar spaces through photographs. Make black and white pictures in which light is the main subject. That can mean photographing the sunbeam that hits your bedroom mirror every morning at 9 a.m. or the shadows that fall across your living room every day at 3. The absence of light can be used for this assignment too. This is a project that can easily be done with a smartphone and an app that can convert images to black and white. If you want to push even further with this light exercise, try photographing the same spot at different times throughout the day. What does it look like at 7 a.m., at noon, at 4 in the afternoon, after the sun goes down? I don't think I'll ever get bored with photography and its unique ability to show us how things are, or how they used to be. Recently, I began collecting antique photographs. In this case are 2 daguerreotypes. Daguerreotypes were the first commercially available photographs. The first photographs that people had of themselves and their loved ones were daguerreotypes. Every daguerreotype is original and one of a kind. The glass plates that I'm holding right now are the same ones that the photographer put in his camera all those years ago. The people in these photographs carried this case home from the studio and treasured these pictures for the rest of their lives. One day, there was no one left alive who cared about these photographs. They ended up for sale and were probably sold again and again until eventually they passed into my hands, more than 150 years after they were taken. I'm not related to these people. I don't know their names, and I probably never will. But the fact that I can hold this object that they held and look at their faces and what they wore that day is extraordinary to me. Photography is pure science, but to me it is also full of magic. I have a bit of a competitive streak, but the person I'm always competing against is myself. Some people are really motivated by envy and the idea of competing with someone that they perceive to be their nemesis. That kind of thing doesn't motivate me. It just makes me sad. Once I figured that out about myself, I was able to stop worrying about what other people were doing and focus on my work and my well-being. To make this work, you have to assume that the people you see doing well are working just as hard, if not harder, than you are. Let go of the idea that something good happening for someone else means that there are fewer opportunities for you, and accept that a lot of success is just random luck. The ability to think this way is one of the most useful skills that I have. Failure and the ability to push through it are important parts of the learning process. After I finished college, I thought a lot about going to graduate school, which is something that a lot of artists do to refine their practice. My husband and I moved to Oregon so that he could attend a graduate program in creative writing. In our first year there, I decided to apply to the graduate art program at the same university my husband went to. I made a brand new body of work that I thought the professors looking at my application would like and submitted the application. I did not get in. I met with the head photography professor later to ask where I went wrong with my application. It turned out that my mistake was trying to make work that I thought someone else would like, not the work I really wanted to make. The following year, I made another new body of work, applied to several programs, and got into most of them, including the one that had rejected me the previous year. I ended up saying yes to another school that turned out to be a much better fit for me. I felt like such a failure when I didn't get into that first program. The easiest thing to do would have been to stop trying to apply to graduate school, and I did think about it for a minute. What I decided to do instead was work even harder. Without that initial failure, I may never have made the work that came next. If I had gotten in with work I had done to please someone else, I may never have figured out what I really wanted my work to look like. And if I hadn't gone to the program I ultimately ended up at, I wouldn't have made the Paul Williams work, and I wouldn't have made this video. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned a little bit about photography and being an artist today. Goodbye.